Alright, welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name's Elliot and you're watching Rickety Ski Reviews. Today we're gonna go back to talking about the World Cup. Now, it's been a little while since we talked about the World Cup. I try not to talk about it unless it's super relevant or just something that I find interesting. So I don't dive into World Cup. I'm not like a World Cup specialist channel, but I have enough background in ski racing and working at these summer ski camps that I can at least give my insight. I worked for Ski Racing Magazine, which was at the time like the World Cup media, although now it's kind of a shell of its former self, but I've got a little bit of insight and I only really make these videos when I have something to add. So recently there was a post from Lindsey Vonn in an interview she did recently where she talks about mental health and how social media kind of affected her at the end of her career. First I'll show you the video and then we'll kind of react to it. But I think that what has really been interesting in the last 20 years is how social media has kind of emerged and directly affected the way that athletes perceive themselves, are perceived by the general public, and really people on a whole, anyone with a phone, has had way more access to athletes than they used to. And I think Lindsey Vonn is the perfect person to talk about this because she's seen both. She saw early in her career, it was really more like published media. People really didn't have access to her and her like personal information the way they do now. You know, she was obviously a huge social media presence and still is, so I think this will be really interesting. I haven't seen this in a while, so I'll watch it again as a refresh, and I'll give you my 2 cents as somebody who now is on YouTube and also Instagram, although I mostly run a meme page, which helps me kind of disconnect. But anyway, I'll give you my insights and what I've seen in the last year, dealing with people who have negative comments, negative things to say. But let's just jump into the video.
I think the mental pressure that athletes have is so much more challenging than the physical pressure. I mean, you can say that you're not gonna look at your social media during the Olympics, but like, let's be real, it's never gonna happen. And all it takes is one comment that you read that will just play in your head over and over again. It's happened to me many times.
Where something will have come up on social media and it will impact your physical performance.
Just gets in your head, you're not good enough, you're too old, you're washed up, all those things, especially towards the end of my career, where it was hard. It became harder to block out that noise. And it's hard to teach a 17-year-old, going to the Olympics for the first time, hey, you have to compartmentalize this, you can't let it affect you. It's a lot easier said than done. For me, I had depression and I never told anyone until I was in my mid-20s, and I had it, when I was a teenager. Because I didn't really have those resources. I didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to. And I think with social media, it's so much more important now to have those resources for athletes and for kids for that matter.
All right, there's a couple things to unpack there. The first one she says is people saying, oh, you're too old, and how it kind of gets in your head, and that she didn't realize that she had these issues that she needed to deal with until later. I do kind of wonder if she's hinting at the fact that her retirement came early and maybe she wouldn't have retired as early had she not had to deal with those trolls, or had they not kind of planted the seed in the back of her head, oh, you're getting too old. Now, this may seem like a trivial thing, seeing mean comments and letting things get in your head, and for most sports you can kind of just push it back. Skiing is a little bit harder, actually. Think about it this way: if you've ever been skiing down like a really steep run and you had any kind of issue with your bindings, right? Or if you've ever been on demo bindings and they go, oh, we can't put the into your normal setting. Does it ever make you just hesitate a little bit when you're going fast? When you're going maybe 40, 50 miles per hour, if you're tucking down a super G hill, does it ever make you be like, oh, maybe I should feather my turns a little bit. Maybe I don't need to go that fast. Now imagine that for someone like Lindsey Vonn, who's a downhill skier, who's going way faster than that and has to be super precise to hit the line and is having hang time while she's in the air. That is when those things being in your head is a bigger deal. Normally, I kind of dismiss this as like, oh, celebrities whining about that, whatever. But in this case, where you have your life on the line based on how you perform and how you react to things, I think it's fair to say actually that this stuff is super important. She also says that she learns about compartmentalizing these mean comments, and I think there's a few ways that you can actually do this that I have seen done since I've been on social media and just been doing these ski videos. One, I get them all the time. People saying, oh, let me see you ski, you're always talking in the back of a jungle gym. First off, those comments are hilarious because you can watch any of my ski reviews and I ski in every single one of them. One thing I did early on when I started doing YouTube is I would click on those people's bios, like you can see their YouTube channel, and sometimes they have video of themselves skiing, and that's when you have to go, okay, maybe I don't need to be taking critique from these people seriously, right? Like it's somebody who is just barely not wedging. Which is fine. It normally doesn't matter, but it was good for me to see that maybe I didn't need to take that critique quite so seriously. The second way you can compartmentalize this stuff is by just creating a persona. If you watch Donnie Pelletier, he's that guy from Maine who does the deep Maine accent, and he's got the, like, you know, the full Canadian tuxedo. I guess that's double jeans. He's got the Maine tuxedo, the flannel with the overalls and the big jeans that you'd use for logging. That guy, if you've seen him, he is always in character. And I posted a meme that had like almost 1 million views, and he sent me a message saying like, thanks for the nice video. So he and I have talked a little bit in the background, and he still talks to you in messages in character. He has completely fabricated this stereotypical character, which I have to say I do find Donnie really funny. I've got kind of that Northeast Vermont, Northeast Kingdom accent that comes out of me every time I watch it. The Maine accent and the Northeast Kingdom Vermont accent are different, but they're not that far apart. We do pick up on some of that. So it goes, oh yeah, wicked dude. You know, like I find myself when I see people that I grew up with talking like that, I can feel myself slide into it. I never really talked like that, but eventually you're around people enough, you pick up some of those mannerisms. So the second way you can deal and compartmentalize with those mean comments is do like Donnie does. You just create a whole secondary character, and anytime someone is attacking that character, well, it's not really you. They're just attacking this version of you that you made. To some degree, I would argue that maybe Bode Miller had done that at some point. He was under such scrutiny for his lifestyle, for his ski style, for everything, that I kind of wonder if that is just what he did in his career. Because if you talk, like the interactions I've had with him now are very different than the way that he was portrayed by the media previously. And again, that could have just been that he was projected that way because it was entertaining, whatever. But I do wonder if that's something Bode did, and just as like a coping method to handle it. I do that a little bit with my Instagram meme pages, where people will be like, oh, well, skiers are just the bikers of the mountains, you know, and they just complain all the time. And it's like, no, bikers of the mountain are called mountain bikers. You know, just kind of that deadpan. You make it into a character, and it's a lot easier to handle. The third way you can deal with it is honestly just use the tools. You don't have to deal with these people. You can block them. You can hide people from channels. I do it all the time when people are just attacking my physical appearance and have no, like, rooted in reality criticism, then I'll just hide them so they can see their comments but no one else can, and I don't have to deal with it for the future. It's not the best way, because I do like seeing discourse. I have a few people who comment stuff and they will be like, actually you said this wrong, but a lot of times they're not doing it to be mean, they're doing it to educate me. So you have to strike a balance there. But honestly, for anybody who is dealing with social media stuff like that, in my opinion, like being a rookie, you're only dealing with it for a year now, you can use the tools. There are ways to avoid that, and I think part of that is when you're young, you don't value your time. You don't understand that your time and effort has real value. That's why a lot of like young creators get kind of taken advantage of by brands. But you don't have to deal with these people, right? Like I think there's this idea of, well, any attention is good attention that you have as a kid. Oh, well, people are talking about me and that's all that really matters. And if I block the comment, then it's one less comment on my metrics. In my honest opinion, it doesn't really matter. I look at comments like that and go, okay, they're not productive. They're not helping me in any way. I don't need to waste my time dealing with them. So I just block them or hide them or whatever I have to do because it's not worth it. I think that's something you learn as you become an adult. Hey, my time is limited, my time is valuable. So on Instagram, since I started that meme page, there's like 8 million views on that channel, which is crazy for the reels. It's different than YouTube. But because of that, I became verified on Instagram. And so Lindsey Vonn's video I actually commented on. So let me show you the comment and her response. Okay, so I said in my comment, Lindsey Vonn, would you say there's an added pressure now for young athletes to build a brand and have an online presence for their career that wasn't there previously? Has it empowered younger athletes with leverage for sponsors? You're in a unique spot where you've seen it both ways. But I do feel like it's interesting where we're in this new wave of like star athletes or athlete celebrities, where some people are more celebrities than athletes and some people are more athletes than celebrities. Lindsey replied, I don't think there's an added pressure to build a brand because it's entirely up to the athlete and most athletes choose not to. But it's a huge opportunity that athletes didn't have in the past. It's also an incredible tool to also prepare them for life after sports. So I think essentially what she's saying, if I'm understanding right, is like athletes don't have a pressure to become online personalities or build a brand or whatever, but it is good for them long term, and it's absolutely a resource they didn't have. And I think that is a really eloquent way of explaining social media in general. That's very much a double-edged sword. Like, yes, you can build a brand, you can become, I guess, more visible and relatable to your fan base in a way that you weren't able to a decade or so ago. But the double-edged sword that you have now is that because people have such easy access to you, it can be really hard on your mental health. You're suddenly having to take in critique that you wouldn't normally have to. I do think that if you're a young athlete or a young professional athlete, it is smart to do, because the length of your career is pretty short. Once you're no longer in the World Cup, you really don't have the leverage with brands and sponsors that you used to. That having social media accounts and having a following is really a way for you to empower yourself to have a long-term career where you can negotiate with sponsors and brands like that. At least that's my, 2 cents. Whereas like if once you retire, there's this freestyle skier in Utah that was talking about this, how like the year he took off, basically all of his brands left, which was fair. And because he hadn't done social media or anything like that, trying to get the brands back with no followers or no social media presence was nearly impossible for him. And I think he's doing it now in his own weird way. I think for young athletes, it makes sense to do. It makes sense to have more to your life other than just athletics. I've gone and run with like national champions. I've skied with people who are really good. The problem is when you put all of your life eggs into one basket and you have a bad race or you have a bad year, suddenly your self-worth just crumbles. Okay, well, if I'm not a winner, who am I? And it's like, okay, at that point you need to take a cooking class or something else. Have some other hobby that you can focus on and be like, well, I had a bad race, but you know what? I'm getting better at the cello. Or, hey, I've like really built out my social circle. Or just have some other kind of outlet for you to be successful other than just skiing, because eventually you can't ski race or do any professional sport forever, so you have to have a balanced life. I sometimes get heat for, oh, you're not a World Cup skier, you're not a Division I skier, yada yada. I'm like, in my opinion, that is a huge blessing, because I know people who are at that level and they really have a hard time rebalancing their life once that's taken away from them. Whereas like, what, being a Division III skier was kind of a blessing, because like, okay, this race is important, I'm gonna try my best, but it's not the end of the world if I don't, get in the top 30 or top 40 or whatever. Like, everything's gonna be okay. I can still hang out with my friends afterwards. I can still go to classes afterwards. And I think it takes away a lot of this pressure and helps you build out a well-rounded life. And I think that this insight from Lindsey is really good. Like, hey, being on social media and having other outlets can be really good for professional athletes, but you have to be careful with it, especially younger athletes. So anyway, that's the conclusion, I think. I think that for professional young athletes, yeah, absolutely use social media, help it build out your long-term career, but take it with a grain of salt. Find a way to compartmentalize those comments. Look at the people who comments profile. Usually you can see that they're not that good of skiers themselves, or, nobody's perfect. And so maybe you don't need to take all this critique at face value, or create a personality. I'm not sure psychologically if that's the smartest way, but it certainly works for people. Or just block them, ban them, whatever. But I think it is important for athletes to have a balance in their life other than just hyper focusing on a sport all the time, because before you know it, the jig's up. The professional athletic career is not that long. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Big shout out to Lindsey for replying to my comment. Thank you so much. As always, you can become a member down below if you want to support this channel. I am the largest independent ski review channel, but more than anything, just thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. That's a free way to help the channel. But more than anything, I just really appreciate that you guys take the time out of your day. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. See ya.